past, spoken about in the past about the idea of offering gratitude, being grateful and speaking of your gratitude, and a higher level of living, a deeper way of living, is not only to speak gratitude, but to be a being of gratitude. And we'll discuss a little bit also this idea, a similar idea with regards to the idea of praise, of praising the Creator, praising Hashem for everything that we have. There's an act of praising where you're saying praise, and then there's a being of praise. So this is going to be related to the idea of saying Halel. Halel, Chazal tell us, the sages tell us, the Gemara, there's a few places in the Gemara that has a sugya of Halel, and one of the main places is in Erchin and in Pesachim and after Pesachim. And the Gemara says in Kuf Yud Zayin, the Gemara says that the idea of reciting Halel is that the Takanas HaNavim was enacted as a practice by the prophets, and the idea is that a kol tzar v'tzar, every time there's a hardship, and Kol Yisrael were in a state of danger, a kol tzar v'tzar, there was a danger situation, a perilous situation, and there was a redemption of that situation, there's an obligation to say Halel. It's Takanas HaNavim. And there's 18 times throughout the year where we have this idea of saying Halel. The Rambam, in Hilchas Chanukah, in the laws of Chanukah, which is on Chanukah, we say, the Gemara says in Shabbos that the Chanukah is B'Halel B'Idah, B'Halel B'Simcha, B'Halel B'Idah, that the idea of Lashon Acheres Kavuim, the next year was established to say Halel. Halel is a very integral part of Chanukah. So the laws of Halel are encased within the laws of Chanukah. And the Rambam writes that speaking about the laws of Chanukah, saying Halel on the days of Chanukah, Loi Chanukah Bavad, not in Chanukah do you have to say Halel. That is it's a rabbinic tradition, a rabbinic mitzvah. The obligation to say Halel is always Medivir Soifrim, it's always with Rabbanan, it's always on the sages, and there's 18 times you have to say Halel. The Ravid quotes a pasuk, and that he says Esei Medivir Kabbalah, that it's a mitzvah Medivir Kabbalah from Nach, for the prophets, as a pasuk Ashir Lachem Kol Chag, that since the pasuk speaks about singing Shira on the Yom Tov, on a holiday, so therefore it's more than just a custom, but it's more than just a kind of Divrei Seifrim, the sages, but it's also the Rabbanan. It's also from the prophets. There's even an opinion that it's really the din is Minat Torah, the way the nusach is the Rabbanan, but the din is Minat Torah, the law itself is Minat Torah. Then the Rambam says like this: the Rambam enumerates the 18 times we have to say Halel. And when the Rambam says saying Halel means to recite the entire Halel. But the idea of saying a half Halel or skipping parts with dilug is not Takanas HaNavim. It's not from the prophets. It's not even Medivir Soifim. It's a minig. That's just a custom. So when the Rambam talks about saying Halel, he's talking about saying the entire Halel. In fact, in the opinion of the Rambam, and there's a lot of other Rishonim pasuk like this, the mitzvah, the bracha on Halel is ligmar Halel, to complete Halel, not likrayas Halel, not to read the Halel, but when you make a blessing on it, it's a mitzvah Medivir Soifrim, and therefore you have to make a bracha. It's a vadim Medivir Soifrim. It's a certainty of Chazal, so therefore you have to make a bracha, and you say Ashek Shalom says it's vadim ligmar Halel, to complete the Halel. There's a famous tshuva from the Maram Rottenberg that says that you shouldn't say that because what I'm saying, you're going to skip a word. How do you know? So therefore he says you should say Likroyas Halel, to read the Halel. There's a Tshuva Sarasha says you could still say Ligmar Halel because Ligmar means that you're going to start the process of completing it. And that's different customs, but the Rambam, when he's talking about saying Halel, he's talking about saying the entire Halel without any skipping. Then he says that we have to say Halel V'rishon shel Pesach, and on the first day, regarding the Pesach, only the first day of Pesach we have to say Halel. Aval Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. He says, how about Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? On Rosh Hashanah Kippur, we don't have to say Halel. V'shem Yemei Tshuva v'Yira u'Pachad, because these are the days of Tshuva, Yira, and Pachad. V'lo Yemei Simcha Yeseira, and not days of special joy. So essentially, really, the Rambam is saying is that in addition to, which is another Gemara, the Gemara in Erchin, where the Gemara in Erchin talks about, Daf Yud speaks about also the sugya of Halel and song in general in the Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara talks over there and says that whenever the Torah describes a day as a moyed, as a Yom Tov, that day we have to say Halel as well. We'll see soon why you have to say Halel. But the Rambam says, so why don't you say Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? So he says the reason why you don't say Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, that Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur would not be a reason. So all the other Yom Tovim, all other holidays, for example, let's say on Sukkot or Hanukkah, which is Darbanan, or Purim. Purim is a Lula, but on Hanukkah, or let's say on Sukkot, you would say that the reason why you would say Halel because it's a miracle. We just said that it was established by the prophets. That any time the miracle happens, there was a tzara, there was a hardship, there was a danger, there was a difficult situation, and there was some type of redemption. Then we have to say Halel. So what would be the svara? What would be the logic to say Halel on every Yom Tov, or let's say a Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? So the truth is, it's not because of that there's a miracle that's happening. Even though there is a lashon of the Torah, that when the Torah says Muftuch Sheyas Lo Nes on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, that's why people come dressed up in nice clothes. Certainly, a person will be judged, and he uses the word Nes, a miracle. But a miracle doesn't mean that in the same way. But pashtus, even though you could say that it says Mansara and it is a Nes, but it's because it's a Yom Tov, and the Yom Tov demands that we should say Halel. But he says because these are days of tshuva, v'yiro pacha, these are days of tshuva, of introspection and of awe and of fear, of trepidation. These are very awesome times. V'lo you may simply say not days of great joy. In other words, that there is another reason why we have to say Halel, and one reason that we have to say Halel is because of the tzara. Another reason that we have to say Halel is because it's days of Simcha Yeseira, special joy. Let's see how this plays out with regards to Shvi Shel Pesach, with the seventh day of Pesach, and Achron Shel Pesach, the last day of Pesach in the diaspora, or Achron Shel Pesach, which is also Shvi Shel Pesach in Israel as one day. So there's a medrash. There's a medrash in the Yalkut, Parshas Emor, in the entire part where it speaks about one of the places in the Torah where it speaks about the Yom Tovim. And this medrash the Beis Yoseph brings down in Siman Tov Tzadik, in the laws of Pesach. And the Beis Yoseph quotes a Shibolei HaLeket, and which is from the earlier Rishonim, the Shibolei HaLeket. And the Shibolei HaLeket writes like this: the reason why we don't say Halel Shvi Shel Pesach is because it was the time Mishum Shabai Tova Mitzim B'Yam, because Shvi Shel Pesach, really the seventh day of Pesach, we celebrate, even though it's part of Pesach, but it's also the finality, the culmination of the leaving of Egypt. The Egyptians followed us until we got to the water. On the seventh day, the water split, the sea split, the splitting of the sea, Kriyas Yamsuf. And that's why the culmination of Yetzias Mitzrayim is with Kriyas Yamsuf. Then we say V'yesh Hashem b'yemahu, and then V'yiminu b'Hashem, which means that the culmination, the completion of the leaving of Egypt process was at Kriyas Yamsuf, at the splitting of the sea, which also represents, according to Dari, represents the process of birth. The Rizal speaks about at great length how on Shvi Shel Pesach his leidas is the birth of Klal Yisrael, the birth of Neshamas Yisrael as a people. We became a people. We went through sort of like the birth canal, that we were birthed as a people through this process. And this is what happens on Shvi Shel Pesach, but we don't say Halel because and the fall of the enemies do not be joyful. In other words, you're going to say Halel, you're going to sing praise for the fact that the sea split and we survived and we made it across the sea, for the miracle of the splitting of the sea. But simultaneously, there was also our enemies were drowned in the sea, and therefore we're not supposed to gloat, not supposed to be joyful and with the fall of the enemy. Do not be joyful. Therefore, we don't say Halel. This is similar. This sounds similar to the Gemara that we have that says that the Malachim wanted to sing Shira, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, the angels wanted to sing Shira, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Ma'aseh Yadatum B'Yamsov Atamei Meshira. It's not the right time. When Ma'aseh Yad, my own handiwork, people that I created, my own creations, are being drowned in the sea, you should not sing praise. Okay, this is what the Shibolei brings down. The Shibolei quotes from the Medrash, from the Yalkut, and what the Beis brings down. But the truth is that this is a very strange, apparently strange thing for the Beis to quote. Why is it so? Because we have a clear Gemara. In again, the Gemara in Pesachim, which talks about Halel, speaks about Halel as a process of singing the Halel as Takanas and Nevi'im, as enacted by the prophets, because Akol Tzara V'Tzara, when there was a hardship and we're freed, then we have to say Halel. When there's a nest, when it's a miracle that occurs. So, but there's another Gemara. The other Gemara in Erchin says, and this is what the Ravid is bringing down, that there is the reason why we say Halel on Yom Tov. We say Halel on, for example, on every single day of Sukkot. We don't say Halel on Pesach, only on the first day. Now, we do say half a Halel, but remember we said before that half a Halel is not really considered Halel. That's just the minhag, that's just the custom. We do say every single day of Sukkot the complete Halel. We only say on the first day of Pesach Halel. This is the Gemara says. And the Gemara says the reason is because whatever has a chiluk b'korban nisayim, anything that has a distinction in the offerings also has Halel. In other words, in Sukkot, every single day of Sukkot, the Parei HaChag is Mesmaita v'holchim. They're less and less every day. So every day was a different type of offering. And since every day of Sukkot was a different type of offering, so it had a particular type. It's almost like a miniature Yom Tov within the Yom Tov, because every Yom Tov itself, the Yom Tov brings joy. The Yom Tov is the quality of the newness of that time. There's a Simcha Yeseira, there's a particular type of joy that comes because of the type of offering, because it means that it has a certain type of distinction that day. So anytime there's a distinction of a Yom Tov, that's called a Moed, the Gemara says you have to say Halel. So therefore Pesach, because the first day of Pesach, and then all the rest of the days of Chol Hamoed and Shvishal Pesach, all the days, the other 8 days of Pesach have the exact same offerings. There's no separate offerings, the same karbanos every single day. So therefore, we don't say Halal on the rest of the days of Pesach. So the question is, why do we need both reasons? Why is the Beis bring down this reason? Because of the miracle that because we don't gloat when the fall of our enemies, and that's the reason why we don't say Halal. That's not the reason why we don't say Halal on Shvishal Pesach on the 7th day of Pesach, and it's not the reason why we don't say Halal, and because of Shvishal Pesach we don't say on the rest of the days of Pesach. The reason is because the Gemara says clearly, it's in Gemara Mufreshes. The Gemara says very clearly in Erchin. The reason is because doesn't have a chiluk carbon the same. It doesn't have a separate offering. So why does the Beis Yoseph, according to Shibolei, give a different reason? That's the first question. The second question is, so why do we need two reasons also? The second question is, if we say that the reason why we don't say Halal is on Shvishal Pesach, on the day of Kriyas Yam, the day of the splitting of the sea, is because Ma'aseh Yadav, because in the fall of Echal Tismach, because in the fall of enemies they're not be joyful. So then the question is, so why do we say Halal on Hanukkah? Hanukkah is the same thing. Or Hanukkah, we say Hanukkah. The story of Hanukkah is that there was a victory. There was a victory, and and we are victorious. And in the nature of victory is someone wins, someone loses. So some people survive, and some people were killed. So that in itself, if the reason is you shouldn't be joyful with the fall of your enemy, then we shouldn't say Halal Chanukah either. Same thing certainly with also with Purim. Purim also talks about the Nekama. And then this is what we say. Now it's interesting that in Halal itself, that could be a distinction, that in Halal itself, in the passages of Halal, we talk about only positive things of redemption, and we're grateful for the redemption. And even when we talk about even when we talk about our enemies surrounding us and wanting to take us down, all we say is that they become silent with the name of Hashem. It doesn't say they're destroyed. We don't have that language in the liturgy of Halal, which is chapters of Psalms, chapters of Tehillim. We don't have those words. But in Haidah, let's say for example Chanukah and Purim, and why Halal is not said in Purim is there's three answers. The Gemara. It's a Neshim Chutz La'aretz, and a Katav Nechashverosh Shanan, or Kirasa Zehilula. There's different answers. The Rambam says Kirasa Zehilula. That reading the Megillah is like saying the Halal. So Halal, there's a concept of Halal, but then there's also the Haidah, Halal of Haidah. In Haidah, which is Na'ala Nisim, which Rashi writes as Haidah, and Shabbos Haidah is Na'ala Nisim. In Haidah we do say that. We actually do speak about the downfall. But the question is still, if the reason for not saying Halal on the seventh day of Pesach is because of Nefayla V'Achal Tismach, with the fall of your enemies, then that same reason should also apply to Chanukah and Purim. What's the difference? So the truth is that there's on Yom Tov, there are two reasons to say Halal. There's not only one reason to say Halal. And Yom Tov, we're talking about Yom Tov Min HaTorah, not with regards to Chanukah, not with regards to Purim, because Chanukah and Purim is Merbanon, B'dei Soifrim, it's in the sages, and Chanukah and Purim therefore don't have karbanos, don't have separate karbanos. But the times when the Torah speaks about a moed, for example, Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuos, and talks about a Yom Tov, there is two reasons why we have to say Halal. There are two separate reasons. One reason is that Yom Tov always is celebrating, let's say Pesach, and even Sukkot, is celebrating, and Shavuos would be the culmination of Pesach, is celebrating a condition of tzara. There was a hardship, and then there was, essentially it's all about Yeseira Mitzrayim, going out of Mitzrayim. There was hardship, there was avdus, there was slavery. We were enslaved, and then we were freed, and we became a free people. And then after the tzara is over, after the hardship is over, we say Halal. Like the story of Hanukkah. There was an oppression. There was an oppressive regime, the regime of the Greeks, the Assyrian Greeks, and they were oppressive. And there was a state where we were physically oppressed and spiritually oppressed, certainly, and intellectually oppressed. And then it was a victory, and therefore we recite Halal. So one reason to say Halal is for the tzara, there was a hardship, and then the hardship left, and we were redeemed from that hardship. We transcended that, and therefore we say Halal. We sing Halal. That's one reason to say Halal on Yom Tov. There's another reason why we say Halal on Yom Tov, and the other reason for saying Halal on Yom Tov is because it's Yom Tov. Just the fact that it's Yom Tov, we say Halal, and to use the language of the Rambam in reverse, why he says we don't say Halal on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur because it's a Simcha Yeseira. It's not a Simcha Yeseira, which means that the reason why we do say Halal on every other Yom Tov is because it's Simcha Yeseira, because it's a joyful time, and in a joyful time we sing praise. So we say Halal because it's joyful, and it's Yom Tov, and we say Halal because we were redeemed from a hardship. They're two separate reasons that come together in Yom Tov Min HaTorah. One is for the hardship, and one is for the Yom Tov, the Simcha. And when is there Simcha? When is there Simcha? Simcha is is mizbata, this idea. Where is it reflected? Where is it manifest? This idea of joy, in actuality, is if it has different karbanos. It has different offerings. If it has different offerings, that shows that there's greater joy. And the truth is, this is what Tosefos says. If you read Tosefos very clearly, there's a Tosefos in Tainus, where the Gemara also talks a little about Halal, certainly about the minig of Halal, the customs of saying Halal, And the Gemara brings on a story. First, the Gemara says that you say Halel 18 days, on the 18 days of the year. And then there's a famous story with Rabbi Kloid Lubavitch in the Halel Beresh Chodesh, that the Beresh Yarchid, there was a Rav once came to Bavel, and he saw that they were saying Halel, and he didn't understand why they were doing that. And then when he saw that they were medallic, they didn't say the entire Halel, then he said that it's a minig of a Samideh. It's a custom of their ancestors to say Halel on Rosh Chodesh. That's the custom to say Halel. And then there's a big machlekes between Rabbeinu Tam and Rambam if they make a bracha on that or not. Rabbeinu Tam says you do even on the minig. But Tosefos is like this. Tosefos and Chavches and Tainus is like this. The Gemara says, the Gemara quotes that that there are 18 days of the year that we have to say Halel, and one of them is the first day of Pesach. Says Tosefos. Who gomer Halel. On the first day of Pesach, we say the complete Halel. Okay, which means we say Halel. The other days, we don't. We don't complete Halel, which means we don't really are not saying Halel, the full Halel. Loy mishum de loy dame lechanukah v'sukkos. It's not because it's not similar to Chanukah and Sukkot, because Chanukah and Sukkot are also Chanukah's 8 day, and diaspora Sukkot will also be 8 days. I mean, even in Eretz Yisrael, it's 8 days. So the 8-day Yom Tov, it would be similar to Pesach, which is 7 days or 8 days in diaspora. So he says, Tosefos says, how come by Chanukah you say Halel every single day, and by Sukkot you say Halel every single day, but by Pesach you don't, only the first day of Pesach? So Tosefos says, the Chanukah dinu ligmoy Halel the Cholach Yom Hayonas Misgadol by Kolach Vechad Yom Tov. The reason why Chanukah every single day you say Halel, because every single day was a new miracle. It increases the miracle because every single day the oil lasts for another day. So therefore, every single day is a unique day, and it's a special, and it has a unique quality of a Yom Tov, of a holiday. Therefore, you say Halel every single day. Pesach, there's no increase in the Yom Tov. The first day of Halel, second day of Halel, third day of Halel, it's all the same thing. It's all the same miracle that we left Mitzrayim. Nothing changed. V'chein b'sukkos. Then Tosefos said the same thing also with Sukkot. Kol yom have a Yom Tov la'atzmai. Every single day is a separate Yom Tov, even though it's part of the same Yom Tov Sukkot, but really has a separate din. Because the Parei HaChag, the offerings that were brought in the Beis Hamikdash, are continuously decreasing, which means every single day has a different type of carbon, different type of offering. So therefore, it's a different type of Yom Tov. Now, and then he says Pesach doesn't have these two distinctions. Now, what Tosefos is really saying, if you find Kohanim, Tosefos is really saying this is the point, that really there are two elements of why we say Halel. On Chanukah and Purim we say Halel, and Purim is, let's say, Purim is the actual reading the Megillah is the Halel, or for the other reason because we don't say Halel because it's Nesher B'chutz La'aretz. But on Chanukah, the reason why we say Halel every single day is because of the miracle, and every single day is a new miracle. So since every day is a new miracle, we say complete Halel. And what is the element of the Chanukah reason for saying Halel? Only the reason because there was a tzar, there was a hardship, and we were redeemed, and therefore we say Halel. Sukkos, you have two elements here really. You have both the element of the miracle, whether it was an covered literally the clouds of glory, or it was an covered Hashem, or it was a Sukkos mamish that Hashem protected us in these booths. But there was a type of protection in our vulnerability when we were walking through the desert. That in itself is one element, because that's the tzara, and therefore you have to say Halel. And the other reason why we say is because since every single day has a different carbon, a different offering, therefore every single day has to be said the complete Halel. Pesach doesn't have either of those, and that's what the Shibolei is saying. Shibolei is saying like this: that is true, that there's no difference in the offerings. So therefore, for the reason for the offerings, you won't have to say Halel every single day. The other reason why we say Halel is because it's a miracle, a different type of miracle, or an increased miracle. So he says like this: this is true with the second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day. This is good with all the days of Chol Hamoed. That's true, the intermediary days. But with Shvi Shel Pesach, a new miracle occurred. If the reason for saying Halel is because of Karbonos, because it has a different type of offering like Sukkot, you're right. Then the Gemara says in Erchin, therefore we don't have to say Halel every single day. And you don't have to say even halal on Shvi Shel Pesach, because there's no chiluk korbanos. There's no separation of the offerings. But if the reason for halal is also because of a miracle that increased, Shvi Shel Pesach, certainly a miracle happened. Unlike the miracle that happened, or even a greater miracle that happened, than that happened in Yetzias Mitzrayim, going out of Egypt. So then we should say halal because of the nes, because of the miracle. So that's why the Shibolei brings on the Medrash and says, no, you don't say halal here. Why? Because even though theoretically you should really say halal because of the nes, because of the miracle, here you're not going to say halal because of the downfall of your enemies, you should not gloat, you should not be happy. So therefore you don't say halal. So that's why the Beis Yosef has to write this other reason. Because the Gemara in Erchin only tells us why we don't say halal because of a karbonis. But you can still ask the question, do you say because of the miracle? So that's why he says, no, this type of miracle, you can't say halal because minufel levechal tismach. So then the question is, how about on Hanukkah? You have the same issue. Hanukkah is certainly no karbanos, but Hanukkah is due because of the nes, but the nes also minufel levechal tismach. And Purim the same thing. And the answer is very simple. In Hanukkah, the undoing of our enemies, those who wish to oppress us, or the victory, the battle, was the day before, but the celebration of the Yom Tov happens the next day. There's a famous Maimer in the Alter Rebbe in Yalkut. It says, Lahavin, why, to understand why the miracle of Hanukkah and Purim, that we celebrate the day after the miracle. In other words, there's the miracle that happened that we survived, that happens through a battle, whether it's the story of Hanukkah or in the story of Purim. And then, V'nochu moyeveim, on the next day when they rested, that's the day that they celebrated Purim. Or Hanukkah, like the Ran writes, is Chanu Chafei. They rested on the 25th day of Kislev, and that's when they started Hanukkah. So it's not the same time of the battle. The battle is already over. There's already been Foilevecha. That's already happened in the past tense. That the enemies already, there's the downfall of the enemies. And now we're celebrating the next day post that event. And we're celebrating that we survived. We're not talking about what happened to our enemies because that happened the day before. That's what happens in Hanukkah and Purim. But by Kriyas Yamsov, it didn't work that way. The story of Kriyas Yamsov is that we were first saved, which means first is the miracle that we survived. And after we crossed the sea, which is the miracle of the crossing of the sea, the splitting of the sea, which on a spiritual level, that was the highest level of miracle, not even walking through the sea, but the fact that the sea split and the Alma Discasa, the inner world, the Yam, which is Malchus, which is concealment, was revealed. And it was a revelation, a tremendous revelation. It was such a tremendous revelation that even a simple maidservant saw greater than the greatest prophets, at a very high level of seeing and experiencing Be'ever Anar, on the other side of the river, highest level of Zriya, of Chachma, very, very high spiritual Madregas levels. So that was the first step. And then afterwards, in sequence, it's a klotz teretz. It's a very simple teretz. In sequence, you would say halal once you cross the sea. But once you cross the sea, if you want to say halal, that's the time when the oivecha, when your enemies are now cast into the sea, where they're drowning in the sea. So then you can't say halal because because b'fol v'chal tismach. So Chanukah and Purim, it's post-event, and in the story of Kriyas Yamsov, it's actually flipped. The narrative is flipped. It's not first that the enemies were destroyed, and then because of that we were saved. If we were first saved, then the enemies were destroyed. Something barach like that. That's a simple teretz. Okay, so what we have over here is that that on the seventh day of Pesach, on Shvi Shel Pesach, the day of Kriyas Yamsov, it's not a difference in karbonos, it's not a difference in offerings, and because of the miracle before the v'chal tismach, we don't say halal. So we can understand this also. The fact that we don't say something could be seen. The omission of something, the idea of not saying halal, can be seen from the perspective of the kli, from the vessel, which is perspective that it's absence, or from a higher perspective, not that it's the absence of halal, but it's the transcendence of halal. It's higher than halal. What does that mean? So the Alter Rebbe, there's a mimer in the Torah, Sheish Yisrael Techo Matzos Miyam Ashiyah Teres Yilachem Tzeres L'Shem Lekecho L'Sasa Malacha. There's a mimer, there's a Hasidic discourse altar that discusses this idea that on Shvi Pesach, the 7th day of Pesach, the Torah tells us that Ubayom Shvi Atzeres L'Shem Lekecho. It should be Atzar. Atzeres means to stop, to pause, to unify, or Latzar, to draw in L'Shem Lekecho, to be with Hashem. And Alter Rebbe says that if you look at the other Yom Tovim, let's say Shmini Atzeres is also called Atzeres, and Shavuos is also called Atzeres. And when the Torah describes, let's say Shmini Atzeres, it says Atzeres Yelachem. Atzeres Yelachem means a day of Atzar, a day to stop, to pause, for yourself, Lachem, for you. But here the Torah doesn't use this phrase. It says Atzeres L'Shem Lekecha. It's Atzeres to be one with Hashem. And Chazal or Doirish, Chazal, they were also in Pesachim, says that the difference is that on Yom Tov it should be Chetzi Lashem, since one time it says it should be Lashem, to Hashem. Sometimes it says it should be to you. So there's different Drashas Chazal, there's Machlekes, how we read it, different Tanaim say different things. But in general, the consensus is Chetzi Lashem, Chetzi Lachem. On Yom Tov we have to celebrate for ourselves, which means physically enjoy it, and to eat, lavish meals, etc., drink wine and meat. And also Hashem, that the day of Yom Tov is a day to dedicate ourselves to God, to Hashem. Okay. But over here it says, when it talks about Atzeres, when it talks about Shvi Shel Pesach, it says Atzeres L'Shem Lekecha. Also the pasuk, it says Atzeres to Hashem. Also the pasuk says Leisasa Malacha. You should not do any malacha. And on Yom Tov, and the other Yom Tov, when the Torah says you shouldn't do malacha on Yom Tov, you shouldn't do any work on Yom Tov, it says you're not allowed to do malachas avoda. You're not allowed to do hard labor on Yom Tov, which Chazal sages say. What does that mean? That certain manual labor you're not allowed to do on Yom Tov, just like on Shabbos, but certain things that you do that are not considered an avoda, like hardship, but are done for your own benefit, like for example, cooking, on Yom Tov, you're allowed to cook with an existing flame. But over here, which means, and this idea of once you're allowed to use fire, you're allowed to use fire for other things also, to light your home, etc., to warm the home. But the idea is that you're allowed to use fire, which using fire is the primary malacha, the primary work when the Torah talks about Shabbos, on Shabbos. From all the 39 malachas, that the one that the Torah actually signals out, or l'chalak is eish, is fire. Because fire is symbolic of work, of ingenuity, of creativity, of creating something. It's the beginning of civilization. Is like the creation, the manipulation of fire, of using fire, how to cook, how to preserve. So fire represents something very primal in work. On Yom Tov, you're allowed to use fire for food. Now, of course, on Shvi Shel Pesach, you're allowed to use fire for food as well. But the Torah doesn't describe it that way. The Torah says, Leisasa Malacha, you shouldn't do any work, which seems, not in actuality, but principally, what it's trying to convey, a message is that it's a day that you shouldn't do any type of malacha, any type of work, even work to cook or to bake, to use for food. Which again, halachically, of course, you're allowed to. But I'm saying principally, on a spiritual level, means you shouldn't do it. What does that mean? That means that the day of Shvi Shel Pesach, the day of the 7th day of Pesach, which is Kriyas Yamsuf, which is going to be connected also to Achar Shel Pesach, which is the final day of Pesach, is the day that's connected to a Ge'ulah reality, a redemptive reality, Mashiach. And since it's corresponding, the first days of Pesach really represents more the going out of Egypt of the past and in the present. And the final days of Pesach, this is one of the reasons why we don't say Shechianu, because it's a premonition, it's like a taste of the future, and not something tangible that we have. It's not enjoyment that we have on itself. The simple reason why we don't say Shechianu is, again, because it's not Chiluk of Karbanis, it's not a separate Yom Tov. But the deeper reason is because it's connected to Geula, it's connected to Mashiach. So since the final days of Pesach, Shvi Shel Pesach are connected really to a messianic idea, to a consciousness of unity, of oneness. And in that reality, there's going to be a reality of no malacha, no more work, because malacha, the idea of work represents the world of duality. Malacha comes from the word hiluch, to move, to progress, to move forward. In the world of duality, there is the state that we're in and the destination we're getting to. And therefore, it's a process-based reality. We're not yet there, and we're getting towards there. We're walking towards that place. So on Yom Tov, on a regular Yom Tov, we're not holding in that place of the redemptive, unified, non-dualistic state of consciousness, state of reality. Therefore, we can do malacha, because malacha represents we're getting to that place. But on Shvi Pesach, on Achar Shal Pesach, represents the time of the Alma Yehuda, the world of unity. In the place of unity, there's no hiluch, there's no movement. That's why, because movement by definition means that you're moving towards something. But when you're already there, there's nowhere to go. This is an idea of the absolute unity within things, the reality of Alma Yehuda, of the world of perfection, of wholeness, of non-dualistic reality. On a very deep level, it's the non-dualistic reality that permeates and includes the dualism, but it's the concept of unity, the concept of one. In the construct of this one, when Chazal talk about this messianic time, it says Yom Shein L'Chayfetz, it's days without desire, because by definition, desire means I'm desiring something that I still don't have. There's still a sense of lack. There's chesed, there's absence. But in the place of wholeness, there's no absence. In the place of the Nikud, in the place of presence, there's nowhere to go. There's no movement. Okay, so this is what the Torah is actually saying. Atzeres l'Hashem l'kecha, it's a day of atzor, stop, be present. To be one with Hashem, transcendent of all processes and all movements, and even eating, which is also a digestive process. If I say I need to eat something, by definition, it means that I am myself, I can't self-survive, I'm not self-sustained, and I need something outside myself, which is in a sense a dualistic understanding, something outside myself in order to be sustained. And I feel a certain chesroinum, I feel a certain lack. This is what when we make a bracha after we eat, we say that the idea of filling a lack, there's a certain cheser, there's a certain emptiness, and I'm filling the lack through eating food. That's the state, that's a consciousness and a reality of duality. In a place of unity, there's no food. And that's why we don't cook. Theoretically, conceptually, the idea there's no cooking, and the idea is, and it's one with Hashem. We're in a place of unity, a place of complete oneness and stillness. This is the oimik. This is the depth of why we don't say Halel on Shvi Shal Pesach, Achar Shal Pesach. Halel, like we just explained, Halel is is when we experience a tzara, we experience a hardship, or a Simcha Yeseira, a state of joy. We're experiencing something, and then we want to express what we just experienced, past tense. The expression of Halel is post facto. It's I experienced it. I feel very happy that I experienced this redemptive state from hardship, and therefore I have to sing praise and to sing praise. I'm praising for something that I experienced in the past tense. That's what Halel is. When I language something, even just speaking, to offer praise. So the Magen Ram brings down from Shem Avudram, the Medrash, that when you say Lohiz L'cha, before Shema, the mouth is created to sing Hashem's praise. But the act of saying that I'm going to praise means that I know something that happened in past tense, or I experienced in my past tense, and therefore I'm going to express it. I'm going to express it through praise. For example, someone does something to you, that's even interpersonally, between man and man. Someone does you something, does you a favor, you say thank you. Right? You eat, then you bless. It's an after idea. The whole construct of before and after only exists within a world of duality. So in the world, if the Shvi Shal Pesach represents, and Achar Shal Pesach represents, and embodies, not only represents. The oil of the Geula is revealed, the light of redemption is revealed. It's revealed always every moment, but even stronger in Achashal Pesach and Sheishal Pesach. On these days, then then to sing Halel is not appropriate. It has to be something much deeper because singing is past tense. We have to be an instrument of praise, a being of praise. Chazal say, the Medrash says that Kol Neshama Halakah, on every breath a person's makes, Kol Neshima, on every breath a person takes, they should sing Hashem's praise. You can read this two ways. Kol Neshima Halakah means, on every breath you take, you should, which means you should be grateful every moment for the fact that you are alive, and say thank you. Or a Kol Neshima Halakah, that every moment that you're actually breathing is the Hilul, is the saying of the expression of Halal, of giving thanks and singing praise. Not I am singing about a past. The being of self is an expression of living praise. I'm in a state of being a being of praise, not just speaking praise. This is a very, very deep way of living that let's say, we'll bring it down 1,000 levels, but it's like, think about it in terms of like a relationship with somebody. You're in a relationship, in a healthy relationship with a spouse. And every time you do something and the person expresses it and says thank you and praises you for the thing that you've done, that's wonderful, and it's very important, and it's Ish Lefi Mahalale, the Pasuk says, a person according to their praise. We know a person how they praise and what they praise. Like Rabbeinu Yonah writes, what a person praises, that's when we know what type of person the person is. What are you praising? Some people praise a person because he's rich, then you know that's what you care about. You praise a person because he's smart, because that's what you know about. You praise a person because he's an ethical person, he's a good person, he's a holy person. Then that's the thing that's important to you. So the expression of praise is very important. But then there's even a deeper way, is you are so thankful to the person that you're in a relationship to. I don't know if the word thankful, but so in a good place with the other person, that your whole being is one being of praise. And this is the highest level of living, and this is the oil of Shir Pesach. This is the oil that's revealed on the 7th day of Pesach, and the 8th day of Pesach, and the diaspora and the Chutz La'aretz. To connect to this, so Hashem should give us the strength that we should live our lives as praise, and our life should be a Kiddush Hashem, a walking Kiddush Hashem, a walking sanctification of Hashem's name, that people just look at us and they should be Mahalal and Mishabeach, the Boyer, that we should live deeply. All right, have a wonderful night.